Oh, I cannot get past this. I'm going to try not to cough into the microphone tonight. Good evening. I'll call this Iowa City Community School Board meeting on Tuesday, October 9th, 2018 to order. My name is Janet Godwin, and I want to thank those in the audience, those watching on YouTube, and those following on Twitter for joining us tonight. I'll start by introducing those at the table with me. To my right, Superintendent Steve Murley, if I can say it. Directors Ruthina Malone, Phil Hemingway, Lori Rotlin, Paul Ressler, Sean Eystone, J.P. Clausen, and Kim Colvin, Recording Secretary. The public is reminded that if they wish to speak, they need to complete a speaker form found at the table in the lobby and turn it in. During community comment, persons may speak to the board about topics relevant to the district. All community comment directed at non-agenda items and agenda items shall take place at the beginning of the meeting during the community comment section of the agenda. Before we move into the agenda this evening, I want to take a moment to reflect on the tragic loss in our district this last week with the passing of Kelly Mulnix and Kim Henry. I'd like us to have a moment of silence, please, as we remember them. Thank you. I did not know Kelly or Kim personally, but I know they were dedicated and compassionate educators who cared deeply for their students and their colleagues. I know JP knew Kelly well, and I would like to see if you would like to say a few words, please.
Kelly Mulnix was my daughter's first grade teacher last year, her first year teaching in the district. And I'll tell you, the first year of teaching is never easy, and Kelly performed with grace and kindness. My family, my daughter especially, were overjoyed to see that Ms. Mulnix had returned for her second year at Kirkwood. I remember often seeing Kelly at AVID or back-to-school nights, at parent-teacher conferences, often bouncing between taking care of us and our questions as parents and dealing with one or both of her young children. Even though I know how stressful that can be, she seemed unflappable. It's a mark of excellence to make a challenging job seem easy. As we were discussing this loss with our daughter, we asked if she had any thoughts about Miss Mulnix, and she said primarily she was always nice and able to handle her class when needed in a kind way. I also know as a parent watching my daughter's progress, she was able to deliver top-notch instruction. This degree of kindness and compassion and competency is a thing to be cherished in this world, and Kelly was able to show this to far too few students in her life. She'll be dearly missed and fondly remembered.
Thank you, JP. And I know, Paul, you would want to say a few words about Kim.
Yeah, as board members, we attend 5 of the graduations here in the district, and the one that I enjoy the most is the Transition Services Center graduation. For those of you who don't know, the Transition Services Center provides community-based education and training for our special education students ages 18 to 21. One thing that always stuck with me from those ceremonies was the amount of pride the staff showed. You could tell how happy and proud they were for the students to be graduating. One person always stood out to me during that ceremony. She was always there with a smile, and that was Kim Henry. The smiles, the hugs, the pride, that was so real from her. Talking with staff and others that worked with her, the first thing that they would say is that Kim cared deeply for her students. She would literally do anything for them. City High Principal John Bacon credits her for her great contributions to the Best Buddy program at City High, which is a nationally recognized program that Kim helped to build. I reached out to former school board director and current Capstow board president Brian Kirschling, who works with the Transition Services Center. He had this to say, quote, "Kim was unwavering in her commitment to helping our students with special needs acclimate and adjust to the real world post-graduation. She gave all her waking hours and often money from her own pocket to help make our transitions program the envy of Eastern Iowa school districts. She had a wonderful sense of humor and made sure every student received the individual attention necessary to succeed and to soar. She will be dearly missed," end quote. Kim was a fixture in our district for the past 20 years, and she will be deeply missed.
Thank you, Paul. I know this has been very hard on everyone in our district, and I want to thank everyone how they've pulled together to provide support to one another, to the families, and to each other as we move through this loss. So thank you all for your remembrances and for your support tonight. Moving forward into our agenda, the first up is our student representative updates from City High, Lottie Goodall and Naomi Maurice. Excuse me. Hello.
Hello, Lottie and Naomi couldn't make it tonight, so I'm here in their place. My name is Rachel Volkman, and I am the treasurer at City High School. So just recently, City High had their homecoming week, and it was very successful. The parade went on very well, and we had a great turnout, and the dance had a record number of students, and there were no issues, so that was very good. Our first choir concert was just last week, and the new director, Mr. Hagee, came through along with Dr. Greg Grove, who has been here previously, and they had a great concert. Fall play preparations are underway. It's going to be 7 short comedies instead of 1 play this year, and the dates for that is the 26th, 27th, and 28th of this month. Best Buddies took a trip to Wilson's Apple Orchard. They have a record number of students in Best Buddies this year and 40 one-on-one pairs, which is their largest number. And volleyball is ranked in the top 10 in the state. That's all. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Next up, from West High, Paras Basug.
Good evening. My name is Paras Basuk, and I am here as the school board representative on behalf of the Student Senate of West High. It is my honor to report to you, the school board, about what has happened at West in the past month. To start, this year West High has led the state once again in having 21 National Merit Finalists and 13 Commended Scholars. As a school, we are so proud to see that members of our school community are getting the recognition they deserve. The debut of West High's new Diversity Book Club proved to be a great success and sparked thoughtful discussion with the club's first guest author, Nick Stone. Many of West High's clubs have begun in the past few weeks. Theater West has cast its fall play, Miracle on 34th Street. The Student Senate has announced its members for this school year, and the fall athletic programs are continuing with fantastic performances all around. Something on everyone's mind as fall arrives is homecoming. A variety of changes to the homecoming tradition have been applied to the event this year. In an effort to make the homecoming court a more accessible opportunity to all of the diverse communities at West High, we have dissolved the gender categories and reformed the selection process to make it more inclusive. In addition, this year's homecoming dance will take place in our brand new gym. Because of this, we have lowered the price of admission while still maintaining the ability to make the event fun and unique. We hope that the combined impact of these changes will increase participation in school-wide events.
Thank you so much. Next up, Liberty High, we've got Razan Karar and Ryan Eystone.
Hello, my name is Ryan Eystone, and I am a sophomore at Liberty.
And my name is Razan Karar, and I'm a junior at Liberty. Tonight, we represent the Liberty High Student Senate.
Since we last spoke to you, Liberty has done so much. First, Liberty recently celebrated our first homecoming weekend at starting with the community parade, which grew from last year as the community surrounding Liberty continues to increase and our Liberty clubs and organizations also grow. Our football game was exciting as it was the first homecoming game as on our own field. The homecoming dance on Saturday night went smoothly, and everyone that I have talked to said they had so much fun and hope for another great dance this winter.
We also recently welcomed visiting author Nick Stone. Freshmen had a chance to hear her speak about her books, Sophia Martin and Autumn Out, and there was a discussion panel for all students who were interested. Ms. Stone's story is an inspirational one, and we were honored to host her. We also hosted Carlos Anare, founder of the Fifth Ward Students and graduate of West High. When he visited Liberty, he spoke about finding a passion, purpose, and making a difference in the community.
As we speak, our volleyball team is playing a pink out game against Thomas Jefferson High School. Everyone at Liberty is hoping for the win tonight. Whatever the outcome, our community is coming together for an important cause. Liberty is also very proud to be involved in the upcoming run for the schools. Liberty students will help check in and at mile checkpoints. Additionally, students will be running in the event, and a Liberty student is singing the national anthem. All of our volunteers will be helping to make sure that the events run as smoothly as possible. Our clubs and organizations are looking for ways to increase our school's engagement with our community.
Tomorrow, part of our choir program will be performing with parts of City and West choir programs at the citywide festival at Oxford Music Hall. All the schools will be singing their own pieces as well as a combined one together. The PSATs will also be held tomorrow. Sophomores and juniors have the chance to participate in this National Standardized Test, which also serves as the qualifying test for the National Merit Scholar Program. About 195 students are scheduled to take tomorrow's exam. Our theater department is well underway with rehearsals and preparations for our upcoming fall play, Clue the Musical. Our math club also recently started and will be having its first competition this Saturday at Xavier High School. And National Honor Society just began a tutoring service where students can meet with NHS members during Liberty time to seek extra academic assistance. We hope this opportunity will encourage peer coordination and allow more students to seek help for schoolwork.
Teachers also participated in learning during Friday's PD at Liberty. Liberty teachers attended session on a variety of things that will better serve our student body. We are proud of having Liberty host events like these, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. Next up, we have the update from ICEA with Brady Shutt.
Hi, President Godwin and directors. I'd like to just, first, thank you for your very kind words on behalf of, Kim and Kelly and, Paul and JP. Those were really, it's a teacher that, does really mean a lot to hear, the impact that both of them had from that perspective. So it's been, obviously a very challenging, month with the passing of Jeff and Kelly and Kim. And this is a profession where you have unbelievable and amazing opportunities and tremendous moments of just, pure joy and growth with students. And it's also because, we are a family, there's some profound sadness. And I think that's what everyone has been feeling is just a real sense of sadness with this. I'd like to thank the district. I thought, making it known that we have Grantwood folks up here on Monday, a day when we did not have class, was I think really important for people. So Steve, thank you and your team for that. I'd just also like to, extend from ICEA our deepest sympathies to the family and friends and coworkers and students of Kelly and Kim and Jeff as well. I haven't been here since his passing. And I'd like to remind our employees, and I'm going to send something out to our members about this. We have a fantastic employee assistance program through, it's called Synchrony. And as part of our benefit package, they are available to work with employees and their families for free, and then our insurance does help to kick in. It's very well received. It's really well respected. And so I hope that people are listening or that are here, they know that they can take advantage of that. It's something we encourage people to do. We want them to do that. It's very important to us. So thank you for your support, and I'll send that out, and I'll link you guys as well. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Brady. We don't have any community comments tonight, so we will move into the agenda approval item. Is there a motion to approve the agenda for October 9th board meeting?
So moved.
Second. Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Moving to the consent agenda.
I'd like to pull Appendix 9.
I'd like to pull E11 and E16.
I move that we approve the consent agenda minus items 11, 16, and 17.
Second.
Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Number 11.
Do you want to do the bills?
Oh, bills, of course. Sorry, Phil.
And Sean went through them as well. If there's anything you want to chime in?
I didn't have any questions this time around.
Yeah, it was 5.1 million. 3.4 million of it was out of our Go Bond funding. We got a lot of projects going on and everything that way. And like Sean said, this one was pretty innocuous. $6,000 worth of clay for ceramic and that type of work. But next meeting, we'll have an update on Go Bond funding to date that way, so we'll have a total on that, but everything seems in order.
Thank you, Phil and Sean. Now we'll move to item 11.
Yes, 11. 11 is the backup generator for the ESC. I asked some questions on the long-term costs and maintenance on that, and I think I personally like to have those answered before we go ahead with it.
We did get an estimate later today from the design engineer team, and they're estimating $700 per year for 10 years.
Okay, and is this diesel or natural gas?
Natural gas.
Natural gas, okay, very good. I move to approve item 11.
Second.
Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open.
That came up
On the wrong one.
different.
Yeah.
I just realized that. I'm like, this doesn't look right. All right, let me close that.
Although approving the textile work at West High twice is okay with me.
Let's try this one. Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Number 16.
Yes, 16 is the electrical outlets for the buses over at the bus facility, and even though it's to a local business and from my favorite town in the county, I feel we should put this out for rebid, and it seems extremely high for electrical outlets for the buses out there.
I move that we approve item 16 on the consent agenda.
Second.
Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with Directors Rotland, Ressler, Godwin, Clausen, Malone, and Eystone voting yea, and Director Hemingway voting nay.
Thank you. Appendix 9.
I pulled Appendix 9 because there's two presentations for Grant Wood and Kirkwood on there we'd like to see.
Come on up, Dave. Kim pulled it off. She's got them on the desktop. We have two presentations seen. First one is for Kirkwood Elementary, and the second one for Wood Elementary. They're part of the accelerated plan that we've now engaged with. The architectural firm for this school is Design Alliance, and they did Coralville Central, they did the Lincoln project, and now they're on this one. A project well suited for their experience and talents. And tonight is presenting is Dave Harrison, one of the principals. When he's done, I'll come back and talk a little bit about schedule and budget.
Thank you, Dwayne. It's good to be here again. The project architect that worked on this, Sarah Houston, who you've seen before, is in Greece this week, so I'm having to fill in tonight. How do we advance this? Okay. So briefly, we'll talk about some of the goals that we targeted in the design. We'll show one slide of some of the ideas that we explored and concentrate upon the one that we're proceeding with, and have time for questions and discussions. The marching orders that we got starting this were to upgrade the HVAC system throughout the building, which is in poor condition. The roofing is in poor condition and has reached its lifetime. There's a lot of rooms in the existing school that are not accessible. Some of the toilets and so forth, the restroom facilities are not accessible, so we wanted to improve that. And there's a mobile the mobile classrooms outside that contain some classrooms and the music room, and the idea was to make that in permanent construction. As a part of that, we wanted to add these classrooms to bring it up to a full section school, and also improve the office situation, the security for people entering. The building, the existing building was built in 4 parts. I don't know if this is interesting to anybody else, but it's always interesting to us to know how we have to coordinate all these different parts that were all different. But the original building, 1963 in the middle there, and then a 69 edition, an 86 edition, and a 2005 edition. And as usual, all the editions probably made sense, each one, but ultimately you sort of wonder about the whole thing again, and it was no different in this situation. One of the things with Anita, the principal, was that Design Alliance presents a lot of options, and these are just 6 of the 10 ideas that we explored, putting different additions in different locations, accomplishing different things with different spaces. But most of these ideas were substantially over the budget, and we don't want to bring something here that is over the budget, so we really had to consolidate things and minimize what we were doing as much as we could to meet the budget, because that was important. This is the idea 7.1, we call it, which is what we're pursuing. This is the existing building, of course. We're proposing down here where the existing temporary classrooms are to build a new classroom wing. I don't know if people are familiar with the building, but there's an existing media center in this area, which is pretty awkward in terms of how circulation to those classrooms occurs through the media center. It's very, very difficult. We're proposing to extend a corridor straight through to the east to meet another corridor that would serve these new classrooms, and convert the existing media center into some new restrooms, a new teacher's workroom, some special ed classrooms. So we would rebuild that existing media center. Well, where does the media center go then? We explored a lot of different options, but the idea that we've settled upon is to convert these 3 classrooms that are now in the middle of the building into a media center in the middle, which would not be open to the circulation the way that it is now, and we think that this would be very centrally located. We hear a lot of things with the kindergartners down here, how long it takes them to get anywhere. So this would move those that media center where it's much more centrally located. Taking a classroom out here to move the office, and as you may know, right now you walk in the door and the office is clear sort of in the back here, but we would move it up and accomplish the same sort of situation where you come in the door and you have to go into the office before you can get into the school. So consolidating in this area, the nurses area, some counseling rooms, some meeting rooms, principal's office, and so forth, which is very inconvenient and undersized now. The other addition is a music room, and we had this music room in a variety of different locations, and this is the best location for it, down here by the gym, because when the kids go to specials, then they might go to the gym, and then they might go to the music next, so it's very convenient circulation for that. And once again, the kindergartners do the music room, and their little legs don't really, it takes them a long time if we had a music room clear up here on the east side. We were proposing to have an alternate for a preschool room. We will design this and bid that as an alternate, And if the bids come in as good as they did at Southeast Junior High, then we would be able to afford that. If they don't, then we would not be able to afford that.
You might back up just one slide. There is one classroom in this area right here that is being used as a preschool room right now. The idea was to make it more appropriate size-wise, and that frees up another room to complete a 3-section school.
How will this look? We're keeping the same aesthetic that the existing building has. Here's that addition out to the east. Here's the addition out to the west. And we intentionally created this to be a lighter color, although it would probably match as well as we could. We're not showing an entrance canopy out here. That will be developed as we develop the design and access to the playground and so forth out here. And this shows the preschool room and the music room down here on the west. There is an existing loading dock in this area now. That would be relocated as a part of this. We haven't really talked if we still need an actual loading dock, or if we'll fill this area to have an on-grade access for the food service vehicles. We're still exploring that, but there is quite a grade drop-off here on the west side that we'll need to deal with. This was supposed to be an animation.
Yep, it just takes a second.
Okay.
Just cycle it real fast.
Maybe not.
Okay. Well, imagine this. But we showed basically an aerial of where that east addition is and going around to the front. We're keeping the main building entrance at its existing location. We were sort of wanting to move that. We showed several ideas about moving it, but it just didn't work out from a budget standpoint. So that's all we really had.
So we did talk about some of the other improvements that you saw in earlier slides, and maybe incorporating some of those in the next phase of the facility master plan. So I've jotted them all down. I think there are some things that the principal would like to accomplish in this building. And so instead of just discounting them, like a more appropriately sized gym, maybe another kindergarten room, things like that, we do have them on our list for future planning purposes. We just can't afford to do them now. We are pushing the budget really, really tight on this one. And I forgot to mention that Dave also designed Southeast Junior High. And we have gotten some favorable costing lately, so we're hoping that this will come in okay. But we have a little bit of work to do. We need to do a little value engineering with this, but I think we'll get there. We are planning on moving the sixplex from Lucas to this school. We'll be losing those 2 duplexes. They're in the way. Could we move them if we need to? Yeah. Do we want to? Not really. I'd rather put the sixplex there. It'll probably go out on the west end of the building because there'll be a lot of construction activity. There's a playground. Gets pretty tight on the east end of the building. Well, I think and Anita's not here, so I think that about does it. So if you have any questions, we
Yeah,
can.
I have a couple. The size of the new media center, how does that relate to the old one?
Well, it's about 24 to 2,500 square feet, which meets our district template. And in terms of the old one, I think it's about the same, pretty close. The old
Okay.
one takes those 4 classrooms in the center right there. Wasn't that correct?
The old one the size of the old one is sort of deceptive because there's that corridor that goes around
That's right.
the 2 sides of it, and it just makes it difficult to circulate.
Right.
If you've been in there, they essentially use their bookcases to create hallways
Yeah.
in there so that they can channel people around the outside of the actual media center component itself.
It's less than desirable.
Okay. And seclusion rooms, are they eliminated in this, or are they still there, or are they permanent?
Yeah, we don't purposely build seclusion rooms. There are some special ed rooms that could be used if need be for that type of purpose, but we're not building them in like we did before.
And the gym and the media center, as far as if we have a summer program and just easy access without opening up access to the complete building, how will this design facilitate that?
Well, I think the gym and the old gym or the multi-purpose room are still pretty accessible. There's an entrance right there. If you look to the bottom of that, where those two kind of come together. So there's easy access there. I don't know, at the media center, then you'd probably open up the entire building if you wanted to use that. But the two large rooms are right there by that entrance. You know where it's at, Phil? Or
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, I see it. I just wanted, I try to bring it up every time we get into something like this on an elementary school or on any school, is that we should be thinking for year-round use and during the summer
Absolutely.
to have it so we don't have to open up the entire building to give students access to those facilities.
That kind of begs the question. We're still planning on starting this next spring. You know, as soon as school's out, we're going to be out there starting the foundations and getting the additions going. So it will go through next summer, the entire next school year, and then the following summer before we're completed. So there might be 2 summers where there's not a whole lot of extracurricular activity in this
No, I
building.
understand, but at some point it will be done and the community can utilize this.
That's correct.
I think my question's answered, but to the west, the garden, that's further out, right? That's that, on the picture, you can see it right there?
See that here?
That's the
There.
garden.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a very well-established garden. I don't want to,
We
Cover it
shouldn't
up.
be anywhere near it.
great, looks like it, so.
Dwayne, one of the reasons I pushed pretty hard to have Kirkwood accelerated was because the size of the preschool room is inadequate at Kirkwood. It's very important that we add that preschool room. They can't get as many students there at Kirkwood, which has a waiting list, as they need, as other preschools can. You know all this.
But
I'm
no,
preaching to
and
the
we've-
choir,
And
but
we've discussed your sentiments in our committee meetings, so we're really aware of, you know, what the board would desire to do here. Just trying to manage I'm just trying to not to be overcommittal on the budget on the front end, but we're gonna do everything we can to make it work.
How much over are we? What's the,
Well, these are ballpark estimates.
Okay.
Okay? So if you asked me today and I told you that the budget was $5 million, it's right at $5 to $6 million. But I don't think they're detailed enough to satisfy me. We need to get to the design development and get some real hard numbers. When we get to design development, I'll share those with you.
and I know this isn't going to be further along, but the floor in the new gym is I think they did a pretty shoddy job when they put it in, so it's
They did.
very problematic. And that kind of stuff,
And
lockers and all that is gonna,
what we'll try and do is like we did at Coralville Central is a good example where we may do some of the flooring and some of the roofing with some of our life cycle funds.
okay.
And probably not till the second summer, which would be into the 20 fiscal year. And so, or even 21, but it pushes it back a little bit, but we'll do those at the end of the project if we can't get incorporated. I would certainly love to put the preschool room ahead of the roof if we can pay for the roof in another way.
yeah, you've come to us with other projects and you've told us they're over budget and that you were going to proceed, even though they were over budget.
Yes?
This has a direct relationship to outcomes.
Yeah,
So I really want to see that in there.
I agree. I think we need more detail or more cost numbers before.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions or comments?
All right?
Thank you.
Thank you. So while the next design team's coming up here, I want to embarrass somebody, but I think she's deserving of it. And the gal is sitting, what's that next
Which one do you like?
Wood. The gal I just asked to stand up, her name's Stephanie Riggin, and she's a mechanical engineer, and she works for Design Engineers. And recently, the Iowa City Community School District received a regional award for energy efficiency for 2 buildings. and it was for Liberty and for Hoover, the new Hoover. But a couple years ago, we also won an award for Alexander and Penn. Now, regional award was 3 utility companies. It's Black Hills Alliant, a Mid-American that covers about 5 states. And they took the top 100 energy efficient projects, and all 4 of those ended up in the top 10. We just won 2 this year. Plus, we've garnered about $1.5 million in rebates. That's a big part of it. And Stephanie's been a big part of that. I just wanted to recognize her. And she's working on the wood project.
Well done, thank you.
Ferris, Stephanie, she's on this project. With us tonight is Scott Palmberg and Sally Obernolte, and they're both with Newman Monson. And so I'll let them jump in, and then I'll come back.
I should also mention that we have our coworker and project team member, Calla Nelson, here, as well as, of course, Stephanie. Other team members on this project include Luke Newton with MMS Civil Consultants, Mike Brenneman with M2B Structural Consultants, and Jonathan Getler with Design Engineers, who's our electrical engineer. Thank you for having us this evening. We'd like to present the schematic design phase for Grant Wood addition and renovations. And I would like to say that we've really enjoyed the experience so far working with Joe Devokie and his staff over at the school, as well as, of course, Dwayne and Jeff and Joe, Michelle and Blythe at the physical plant. And so Sally will kick things off here explaining a little bit about the scope for this project, items included in the project, as well as plans showing how we arrived at the current floor plan.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Good evening. Well, the scope of this actually sounds very familiar and similar to the Kirkwood project. So there's not a lot that is too different there. But if we jump forward in slides, is it just the page? All right. So the overall goals of the project was to provide new music and art rooms. Number 2 was really to eliminate the modular classrooms that you can see there on the west side of the site. Also to replace the HVAC in the majority of the building. There was some newer from 2005 that wouldn't be replaced. And the 4th one, really to provide safety and security, accessibility, and finish updates as needed throughout the facility as well. So this is just an existing layout or site plan. We'll scroll. Try that. We did also take a look at several variations and options as to study what is the right thing to do with this facility and with the addition. We took a look at 3 different locations on the exterior for an addition indicated by the A, B, and C. We also took a look at an interior option as well. Most of the conversation ended up settling around whether with A, B, or C with additions. Area A, that basically, both areas A and B are essentially extensions off of existing classroom corridor wings. Area A would be, or I should say Site A would be a little bit easier. It has an easier corridor to extend off of. Area B is a little bit more complicated because that's a pod of classrooms there, which in order to create an actual extension to that new area, we'd have to modify those classrooms to actually get a corridor connected all the way through as well. But not that it couldn't happen. And then Area C is actually off of what is now the event entry into the main gymnasium, which is located here in this area. And through discussions, we really ended up zeroing in on Area C as being the most logical, similar for some reasons as Kirkwood as well, where it puts music located very close and adjacent to the gymnasium. And they just have so many things that depend on each other, not only for events, but as well as for how much time it takes to get from music to gym, which seems to be how the schedules align a lot within their curriculum, so throughout the day. So that was a very good advantage. The other advantage is it allowed the modular duplex to stay in play during construction. So we could continue to utilize that space that's already there and not have to modify that. And then as we move forward, areas A and B allow for very good future expansion opportunities as well. So we really zeroed in on Area C. for our new addition, and then you can see here in white the potential of future expansion to create a larger section school, potentially even connecting the two corridors and creating great circulation through the building and not having kind of that dead end almost, if you will, at the end of each of those corridors. It's really relatively pretty simple, trying to stay in line here with the existing facade on the south, extending that the grade and the sidewalk around the building and keeping all the playgrounds intact and in play as well, so that those classrooms would then have those views out onto the playground area. We also got into a little bit of the history here. So as you can see, and as you're familiar with, there's always an addition onto almost every school building that you've probably ever seen. The 2005 area is the most recent, and that is an area we're not really touching a lot of in regards to renovations or any work. Our new addition will be built up against, or is proposed to be built up against that 2005 on this side, on the east, and then to the north of the addition, it would be up against then the original 1968 building as well. See if we can get all that in there as best as possible. And this shows then the proposed. So in the dark blue, roughly a 5,000 square foot addition of music and art and a new event entry entering into the gymnasium area. In the light blue is the major architectural renovation pieces. Also with this project having that secure main entry, this is currently the main entry into the building if you're not familiar with it. And it does not currently have that entry that forces you to enter through the office space right now. And so this is proposing to do that and to correct that. So there is a fairly substantial renovation portion happening in this end of the building because of that. And then the classroom, or I should say the restrooms is the next one. So the older restrooms here and here within the facility are being proposed to be renovated and updated. The classroom entries at each of these pods, there's 4 pods original to the building. They're currently open to each other at the ends of those, and this is proposing to actually enclose those to try to keep them as open and connected still as possible, but to actually provide large opening doors that can be shut or opened so that they can have some better sound and acoustic separation at the end of each of those. And then exterior windows on the facility is proposed as an alternate right now to replace all of them. And the corridor finishes, you can see all the corridor essentially is highlighted in blue here, or light blue. And that's proposed as an alternate as well to update that, and that really helps to really unify the entire building at that point, and they have kind of a hodgepodge of different things happening through there. In the diagonal stripe areas, that is the majority of our mechanical, electrical, and plumbing renovation. So this whole building will be updated so that it has the fire suppression system. Some areas already have that, so we don't have to put it in those areas, obviously. Geothermal HVAC replacement as well throughout. This is already is on the geothermal system as well as the media center. And then LED light fixtures throughout, which we will at that time too go through and replace all of the ceilings so they all have a nice fresh look throughout the building as well. And then you can see I'll zoom up here. You can see on the left, on the west, a possible proposed addition of how we could connect these and actually create potentially 4 sections for K through 2, and then 3 sections for 3 through 6, as well as still leaving the miscellaneous classrooms that are needed for the special ed areas. So that's the proposal on those updates. If we zoom into that main office area, all quite fitting on the screen, but main entrance here, this is showing you the existing, okay? So their existing situation right now. You have to be buzzed into that front door, and then you're allowed in, and you check in at a window here at the reception right now. So this is the current layout that they have within there, and the principal's office is over here, and this is currently the art room. And if we go down to the proposed, essentially taking that art room space and consolidating and bringing in all of the different administrative pieces from the principal to the counselor and all of those pieces, and trying to bring them in together for some better adjacencies to each other to the front, and creating that secure entry point where you enter in here, check in the office, small waiting area, and then can enter into the building once you've actually checked in. And bringing in counselor, room for health, and reception all with eyes on deck here. And then this allows a conference room to happen where the principal's office currently is, or can be flexible and become something else as needed in the future. Zooming over to the music and art area. So now we've gone back over to the south side of the building. This is where that entry point is currently into a hallway that enters into the gymnasium. So we'd be pulling essentially that entryway out to this point, which probably can't tell in this diagram, but creates an actual nice little entry courtyard, if you will, in relationship to the main entry as well. So it brings those two entry points closer together. So there's a little better kind of supervision of those 2 points from one vantage point, if you will. As well as maybe some better wayfinding too, with just some signage that can clearly identify that. We have met, I should have said in the last one too, we have met with the users of all these spaces as well for a schematic design kind of review with them and getting everybody's input in. And so their input is reflected in all of these. We have our general music space here, as well as a separate instrumental area, which is a little bit smaller. All having their respective storage areas that they need. And we've also met with the art instructors and with their storage and kiln space as well through here. We are looking at south views, windows out towards the playground area out of our instructional spaces there. And again, aligning that new facade with the existing. And then we also are able to bring in some north views and daylight into that art room. And along this grid line B here as well, we'll show you a couple images here in a second, and you'll be able to see that that is a sloped roof that aligns with an existing sloped roof that'll bring in clear story north daylighting into each of these 3 instructional spaces. And here's an image as we walk from the parking lot area up the sidewalk towards that space. This here would be the new addition. This piece here with the views to the park or the playground. This is the part that's existing. And so the masses are kind of reflecting each other, and we're trying to match the brick as closely as possible, as that we feel that's like the strongest unifying element of this entire facility, really. And if we walk up a little bit further, if we were standing up near where the front entry is and looking back towards, this would be the new event entry, if you will, towards the gymnasium area. And as you can see, these were those windows into the north side of the classroom, as well as the clear story daylighting on the north side of each of those classrooms as well. And did I miss anything you want to add? All right, that is our presentation.
So Joe, you want to come up? Joe's kind of bashful.
What's that? I'm not bashful. Oh. But you didn't tell me I had to speak until I walked over here. You didn't tell me I had to speak until I walked in the door.
I wanted to get you here first.
That's what I'm saying. No, I think first I want to start by saying thank you to the board. Oh, I got to talk about this. I was going to use my teacher voice. Thank you to the board, the community, the district, and then Scott and Sally and their team, because this has been, without them, this wouldn't be possible. But it's been, when Dwayne came to us and said that this has been accelerated, it was like, okay, we've got a little bit of time here, let's do it. And so kind of overwhelming, but it's been a very seamless process. And I think having been there for 7 years, you've kind of learned, when we think about safety and accessibility and just, really making it feel like a welcoming school community. These guys really heard that and really put it to fruition here. Dwayne did tell me I had a budget, so that was the unfortunate thing, because I think like any building, it could have been a long list, but they really took, within that budget, the most important things, and then took and looked at that phase 2, because, I know as we look to see that student population increasing, how are we meeting that increased population, not only, in our K-6 classrooms, but then also when we talk about our title, our ELL, our special education. So I think those are things that they've kind of talked about and proposed and, how to address that. But it's been a great process. We're very excited. Staff is excited. Students are excited. Missing the PTO meeting tonight because I said I'm here talking about this, but I said I'm excited to bring this back to our next PTO meeting to share with them kind of the proposed plans and how this is moving forward. So, just very exciting to see this come, so fast and how it's going to impact the student and the community. So I thank you guys, and we're looking forward to the next level of this. So.
All right.
All right.
You did just fine. Don't leave. They may have a question for you. A couple of things. We did, and I haven't had time to tell you this, but we did get some preliminary numbers back. We've got a little more detail in this plan. It is under budget, which is good. So I think we're really going to try and incorporate the windows and the doors and some of the hallway features and, improving the corridors and that type of thing. A lot of the interior spaces, I think we're going to be able to get there. So that's good. We're also talking about phasing through the building, and didn't originally plan for this, but I'm thinking that we probably need to move either the 2 modulars from Alexander, because their 4 classroom addition will be done, move those 2 back up to Wood to use during construction, and or move one from Kirkwood, the ones that are in the way. So we have to work through that, but I think it will make this process more efficient. Same timeline, start in the spring, be done, ready for through the next school year, the following summer, then that fall. So I think we're in pretty good shape. So with that, we take any questions you might have.
Any questions?
We've had some concerns about seclusion at Wood. What will this help with special ed space at all with?
So what I think they're proposing here, so our current classrooms for special education right now, we have 2 classrooms that are dedicated to that special education behavior modification focus program, and one that is shared space between our 2 support resource teachers. So we're not changing that, other than I think one of the plans that look like, maybe one thing we might be changing is the access doors to that classroom unit that they might have currently moved in. But as for, is it going to adjust the space? That's not being touched.
And maybe some clarification, because I think we need to get it out there. The first couple of schools we did, we basically built rooms that were very similar in size to those portable units that we were using that could be used that way, and they were permanently built. We've gotten totally away from that. We're not building those size rooms anymore. But we are identifying rooms that could be used for that purpose if there's a child that needs that type of situation. So we're not building what I would call that old time out or seclusion room. We're not doing that. So you need to know that. That's not in the plans. The architects know that. The principals know that. It's just we don't do it.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, thank you so much for your presentation. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
I move we approve Appendix 9 as presented.
Second.
Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Now we have a public hearing for West High School Phase 2 addition.
Now is the time and place for the public hearing on the proposed plans and specifications for the West High School Phase 2 addition project. The Board of Directors set the date for this public hearing on September 11, 2018. Notice of public hearing was published in the Iowa City Press Citizen on September 12, 2018. The district will receive bids on this project at 2 p.m. October 11, 2018 at the Educational Services Center located at 1725 North Dodge Street, Iowa City, Iowa 52245. Notice to contractors was published as required by law in multiple statewide plan rooms and on the Iowa City Community School District website on September 12, 2018. Are there any questions from the board? Are there any questions from the public?
Thank you. Next up, a discussion item. First is our voluntary school transfer form. In our last board meeting, we discussed restricting voluntary transfer We've had a couple of work sessions on that topic, and tonight we're looking at a proposed revised form around voluntary transfer. Steve, do you want to maybe walk us through that real fast?
I'll just give you a quick overview here, and I know part of our process is to just get this out in front so that people have a chance to see it. A reminder for people who are watching or are with us that we'll have our community engagement meeting on Thursday, so there's an opportunity for them to provide input. We continue to get feedback from folks via email and phone calls, and part of the idea is to ensure that there's plenty of opportunity for the public to come in and share their thoughts with you. So what we have done is we've taken the form that is currently in place and modified that to try to reflect conversations that have taken place at the board work session table. And I'll just walk through those with you. And again, point out, there we go, this is a draft. And there's opportunity for us to make changes to this based on input from the board and the community over the next few weeks. You see at the top there, the elementary voluntary transfer information. A couple of things that we want to make sure that people understand. This is not open enrollment. Open enrollment is from one district to another. This is not also for families who are homeless. There's a separate process for that, so we've got those two disclaimers up front. And then we get right into the heart of it, if you will, and that is the conversation that we've had at the work session table about making the transition to a situation where there are fewer opportunities for voluntary transfer in the district, and how do we handle students who are currently on voluntary transfer. So you see some potential exceptions in here. We wanted to find these for you and for the general public. We gave you a little bit of an idea at the last work session about the numbers that we're talking about, or I guess that was a couple work sessions ago, about the numbers that we're talking about here. So I'm just going to walk through these, and please stop me if we're going through and you've got questions about them. Or if there's things we've talked about at the work session that I go past that we need to make sure the general public hears about. So again, a reminder that prior to the 14-15 school year, people had the opportunity to request and then receive a voluntary transfer that carried through their elementary years. So we do have students that were either kindergartners or first graders back in 2014-15 who may have been granted a transfer that at the time they were told carried all the way through their sixth grade school year. So there'd be a 2-year run out left on students under that first bullet. Second bullet, SINA stands for School in Need of Assistance, and that was part of the old No Child Left Behind Act. One of the things that that did was it gave people the opportunity to transfer out of their school. When that act was replaced by ESSA, the elementary, actually no, I can't remember what that was, elementary, secondary, what's the third or second S? But in any event, when ESSA replaced NCLB, one of the things that we were told was we could eliminate the SINA transfers. At that time, we decided to allow those people to continue to, those children to stay in the school that they transferred to. So in that case, we've got students that would have been kindergarten first or second graders, 2015, 16 or prior. So there's a 3-year run out on students in that category. The third bullet, students receiving special services transfers. As you know, we've been working really hard to expand our special services programming. In particular, English language learners would be a great example of this. At the time that we started working on this process, ELL was only in some buildings, and so we as a district would transfer students into those buildings. As we began to build out our ELL program and expand it to more schools, we had some families who said, hey, you moved me from school A to school B in order to receive ELL services. I know you now have services in school A, but we've become attached to school B. Can we please attend there through the end of 6th grade? So whether you were voluntarily or district placed in either special education, English language learner, or through a 504 program, we could provide consideration for those students to again finish through their 6th grade year. This was the fourth bullet, something we discussed at a couple of work sessions, were employees who have transferred students into buildings where they work. The one thing that we don't know is the number for this. We don't track transfers by employee category. So we don't know a specific number here, but the discussion that took place at the table was that we may have had employees who've made decisions about requests to transfer their employment from one building to another. It may be dependent on where their kids go to school. And again, could we provide an opportunity for them to have some run out and allow their children to get through 6th grade? Grant Elementary School, the fifth bullet on there. We had a long conversation when we were going through the development of the Grant Elementary attendance area for students that fell into 3 different categories: those that lived in the north part of the Lincoln attendance area, the south part of the Van Allen attendance area, the north part of the Wickham attendance area. Could they be granted the opportunity to stay in their home school after the opening of Grant Elementary School? Some numbers very small. There are only 9 kids in that South Van Allen Elementary attendance area. The largest one would be our Lincoln Elementary attendance area, just over 60 kids there who are current Lincoln Elementary School students, but were zoned to go to Grant in the new attendance areas. And one of the things that we had talked about, but not formalized at that point in time, was the opportunity for those students to stay there through 6th grade. Capstone transfers, the 6th bullet there. We've traditionally allowed 5th grade students as they matriculate to 6th grade to complete their elementary school years in the school in which they started. And so as 5th graders move to 6th grade, we've provided that opportunity for them to choose to voluntarily transfer if they moved. The next bullet I have in there as a placeholder. We do not have a formal opinion from legal on this yet, and so I will take full responsibility for the language that's in there because, again, as a placeholder. So what I drafted was voluntary school transfers will be considered in situations where there's space available and it helps the board achieve the overall goal of better demographic balance. Demographic is a term that I put in there as a placeholder. It could mean many things. We would want to operationally define that, but at least at this point in time we have that in there. Joe Holland is back in the office. I had a conversation with him this morning. He says he will have an answer for us by next week for certain when we get to our work session. We had a long conversation about good cause exceptions. Under the open enrollment law, there are multiple categories of good cause exceptions, and those allow students the opportunity to move into from one district to another if they don't meet other guidelines, for instance, the date requirement that's in there. We found 3 in there that we think are particularly pertinent to the district: change in residence, and you can see the various categories there, pervasive harassment, and severe health issues. So those, again, are part of that state open enrollment law, and we would suggest that we consider continuing those in our voluntary transfer process as good cause exceptions for parents outside the other transfer categories that are there. So let me stop and ask, A, if I've missed anything from previous work sessions, or B, if you have any questions about that.
So on the demographic balance and transfer, we won't have an answer when we have our discussion with the public.
We may. I told him that it is of urgent importance that we get an answer on that, so he was starting his work on that today.
I just make a comment on, because I think I brought it up in the first place, the district employees stuff. I did not bring it up in the context of current ones that are doing it to grandfather them in. It was basically a perk for our employees. I did talk to current staff members over the weekend, and one of them made the comment that she could see how it may help with recruitment and retention of good paras if they could, whatever school they get into, they can, they work their schedules around their kids' school schedules, and if their kids were there with them, like that may be a boon. So I just want to put that out there. As I understand, I think when I brought it up the first time, I talked about it being the slippery slope of having permanent exceptions, right? But I think that's something to at least think about if we're going to really be behind our staff, which I think this board and the admin is. I think it's something that we can help, make it a more attractive place to come and work and stay.
And just for discussion's sake, I guess I would tend to look at the opposite side of that too and say that we're giving certain people advantages that others in our community can't have. So that's kind of where I land. I'm not necessarily in favor of it in general, but that's just my opinion.
So we've got work session opportunity this evening to continue that conversation. We've got the session on Thursday that Steve mentioned, 6 to 8 Northwest Junior High, where we hope to have a great number of community members come and share their opinions and discussion around this proposed modified transfer policy. I'll just state again, that this work is one piece of a broader set of initiatives that the board is taking on around ensuring equitable learning environments for all of our students in the district as part of our broader equity, achieving our equity goals. And so this is one piece. And we'll be doing more along with this. So,
Absolutely.
any other comments or questions from board members this evening on this topic?
I'll just share this on the second page.
Oh, yeah,
I'm not going
thanks.
to go through all of this, and I know we had tried to keep this at one page. It currently is at one page, and it was 6-point font, which I can't read, so it's now 2 pages. Many of these are come right off the current voluntary transfer form, so I'm not going to go through all these with you. The one thing I do want to make sure that I draw to your attention is at the bottom. And we've had a couple people who have asked us questions about this as they've become more aware that the board is talking about the voluntary transfer issue. So students that are receiving special services, and again, those could be special education students, English language learner students, or 504 students. There are times as we go through those meetings with parents where a determination is made collectively by either a 504 team, a special ed team, or an English language learner team that it would be beneficial for a student, given the specific needs that that student has, to be placed at a different school. That process is still in place. I want to make sure that you understand that. Again, we had a couple parents that asked us about that. That process is still in place. That's governed by the IEP team. It's governed by the 504 team, that ELL collaborative meeting with the parents. So even though we are getting to the point where more and more programs are offered in more of our elementary schools, ELL is universal right now, there are still idiosyncrasies in any given student's education needs that sometimes require a difference in placement. And so we just want to make sure that people are aware that that's still in play. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate that very much. More to come at our work session. The next item is board equity work. I sort of referenced this in the voluntary transfer discussion. The board's been working on advancing our equity goals for some time now, and there's so many activities going on. We felt the need to put out a statement that just reiterated our goal, why we're doing this work, what it is we're doing, and then to put some time frames around the work that we're doing so that the community and school staff have more certainty and know what to expect in terms of the board's work around our equity goals. And so I know the statement is attached to board docs. I'm going to read it, though, and hopefully not. Yeah, if you want to, and I'll read it. Have a couple comments afterwards, and then would invite board members to add anything to that as well. So while Steve's pulling that up, I'll just start. The board of the Iowa City Community School District is committed to providing equitable learning environments for all students. Previous boards had the same commitment and developed strategic goals for equitable student outcomes and experiences, as well as for balanced school populations. We are determined to continue to advance these goals with a sense of urgency and with measurable outcomes. First, we will continue to foster a culture of equity and cultural responsiveness throughout our district. We highly value the work of our teachers, para-educators, and all staff who work in our school buildings. We want to ensure they all have the supports they need to be responsive to the diversity of students and families in our district. To that end, we strongly support district initiatives such as implicit bias training, positive behavioral interventions and supports, restorative justice practices, recruitment and retention of teachers and staff of color, the climate and culture survey, and the continued use of disaggregated data in support of decision-making. Since May, the board has also been researching options designed to better balance our elementary school populations. Options under consideration include the following: eliminating voluntary transfer with some defined exceptions, changing boundaries and attendance areas, pairing schools, creating magnet schools. The board recognizes that these kinds of changes would require a great deal of planning and communication, and we therefore are looking at a multi-year phased approach. For the 2019-2020 school year, we are considering restricting voluntary transfer and making specific boundary changes. We are currently working on these items and plan to vote on voluntary transfer changes at the October 23rd board meeting and on boundary changes at the November 13th meeting. The board has also been doing a great deal of research on pairing schools. We will continue working on this concept in January 2019, at which time we will host a series of meetings and forums on the goals and impacts of pairing schools. Should the input and research demonstrate that pairing schools is a positive means of accomplishing our equity goals, the board will make a decision by May 2019 to move forward. The earliest that we could implement paired schools is the 2020-21 school year. Once we complete our work on paired schools, we will focus on other school concepts like magnet schools. The board is deeply committed to making positive changes in support of all of our students. We believe these changes will make our district stronger and will drive positive change and growth throughout our entire community. So we'll be using this statement in our various community engagement activities. We talked about a press release even, putting it out on the district website, just again to make sure our community and stakeholders are aware of the work we're doing, why we're doing it, and what they can expect throughout the process. A couple other things I would want to note, I think that, that are illustrative of our commitment. This fall, the board has actually participated in 2 3-hour board retreats around implicit bias training. And I want to thank Cersei Stumbo and Ellen Day Williams from Westwind Education Policy for leading us through those activities. I think, speaking for myself, I learned a great deal and had the opportunity to reflect on how, as a board, we can do our work with an equity lens. We also talked about norms in the implicit bias training session, and I think these norms, while useful, very useful in implicit bias training, I think will also be useful for us as we engage in our community meetings and in forums, et cetera. And some of the norms that I think are especially helpful are staying engaged, experiencing discomfort, expecting and accepting non-closure, speaking your truth, and perhaps for me the most important is assuming positive intent and taking responsibility for impact. And so I think that this work that we're embarking on is hard, and if we have those norms in front of us and especially can assume good intent, then we together as a board with our community stakeholders, we can move forward and make very, very good progress. I also want to note that in terms of implicit bias training, we've been doing a lot of work the last 2 into our 3rd year now with teachers in implicit bias training. And I would just like to note that I know there have been intentions, and the board does support extending that training to all building staff, paraeducators, secretaries, food service workers, et cetera, understanding that equity requires cultural change and awareness, and that making sure that all of our staff have the opportunity to have those experiences and training is very important. And so with those comments, I would open it up to any other comments from board members that you'd like to add to that. Hearing none. Thank you very much, and appreciate all the time and energy that went into crafting that board statement. I hope that it's useful for community members as we move forward. The next item up is board communication tool. Paul, do you want to talk about this one?
So I reached out to Steve and Kristen as well about and just another way for our board to communicate out to the public information about things we're doing, some of the decisions we made, maybe upcoming meetings, and we all kind of collectively came to the SMORE presentation, which is some of the schools have used to email out or be able for community members to access from the outside. So we put together kind of a sample one here, which you can see in your board docs, and I think it's on the web now too. We just wanted to get your input on this, if you thought it was a good idea. It's not going to be necessarily an opinion piece, just more information from us. So as you kind of scroll through there, this is what it would have looked like if we would have put it out after our last meeting. So it would just kind of list our goal, overall goal, what happened at the board meeting. This comes straight from the minutes that Kim takes. Our presentations, and then if you kind of keep going down, you'll see we have a link for where our community meeting for the voluntary transfers is at, information on that. And then we kind of went through the same thing where we had some upcoming dates so people would be able to easily follow along when we're going to have our discussion on voluntary transfers, when we're going to vote on it, and then just some more links at the bottom that you can click on to for board meeting dates, agendas, meeting minutes, ways to contact us. One of the great things about this is if you go all the way to the bottom, you can translate this from English to, I don't know, how many languages is it, Kristen, do you know?
We looked at that. I don't remember the total number, but yes.
It's a ton of them. So it's an easy one click will translate it to any kind of, any language that we have on there. So I don't know if you guys, thoughts on this, if there's something you'd like to pursue. I've offered to help Kristen after our meetings do these. It's pretty easy for her to update as well.
Right, and we kind of talked about by Friday of the week of the board meeting, we would be able to have this pushed out as soon as minutes are done.
I think we can never have too few ways of communicating out. I mean, we were 10, 12 meetings into the process of talking about boundaries and pairings, and people are like, this is the first I've heard of it. So obviously, we're not doing a good job of getting it out there. So I think anything we can add on to help get the message out and what we're doing, I think is great.
Completely agree. I like the format too. I think you did a nice job mocking up this sample, and I would love to try to continue to do this.
We had talked about pushing out an all district parent email, notifying them of this new tool and how they can find it, providing them the link. But if you see up here the orange button to the right-hand side, it says Follow Iowa City Schools Board of Directors. You can click on that and add your email address. So every time we do a new one, it would automatically send that to anybody who's registered to.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's good.
This would also be accessible right off of the school district website.
Right.
So you could go to our school board tab and would be under
It's right. The second. I put it temporarily up there today just for presentation purposes, but.
Now, is there any added cost with this, or is it just more time for you to manage and do?
There's no added cost. We have a number of SMORE licenses across the district, and we did have one vacant license that wasn't being used, so we were able to plug this into that. So yeah, it's really time, but quite honestly, if we're pulling the information straight from the minutes, it doesn't take too long
Cut
at
and
all.
paste and go that way?
And then just another thing too, Kristen, I think we kind of discussed what would be the most impactful or most what people are clicking on the most. And so I think one of the things a lot of the principals have started to use this for their daily updates or weekly updates, especially at the secondary level. So people are kind of getting trained that this is kind of the communication tool. It looks different for every school, but it would be similar for us as well.
Right. And I also can utilize social media. Every time we get one of these completed for the week, we can push a link out through social media as another avenue. So a couple of things we can do.
That's what I'm thinking, just, the more we can get this out, not just to district, people with families in district, but just the whole community, just finding ways to get it out to the general public. But yeah, this is a great format. I've been messing around with the translation. They have many languages there, so not Oromo, but a lot of others. So.
Yeah, I like this tool. It lends to us being even more transparent because it's pulling out, I like the format of using the action items from the minutes, so that way people know some of the more important things that the board decided on from the last meeting. So thanks, Kristen and Paul, for working on that.
And then that action items too, I think we kind of, Kristen and I discussed it, and with Steve as well, that, we wanted to make sure we were as far out as we could say, if we're going to have a vote on something that's, that we think community's going to know about or be part of, that we put it out there enough ahead of time so that they can see it.
I think it's fantastic. Any other comments? I want to thank Paul and Kristen again, too, for Paul for the idea and Kristen for help to putting the sample together for us to review and look at. I think it's going to help us immensely, get the word out, engage our community. It's really good. Thank you all so much. Next up, action item, recommendation to approve request for modified supplemental amounts for excess LEP costs. Is there any commentary, Leslie, from you on this? Is there a motion?
I move to approve the request for modified supplemental amounts for excess LEP costs for the 2017-18 year in the amount of $1,390,784.42.
A second.
Vote.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Anything, directors, from your liaison reports this board meeting? Anything people want to highlight?
I'll highlight, I went to the Center for Worker Justice on Saturday. It started at 1:30. I left just after 5. There were, I'd say, 25 to 30 people there, and lots of engagement. We definitely, our Spanish translator earned his money that day. These are pretty difficult things, I think, to translate. And just a lot of really good feedback, and frankly, the discussion kind of very quickly goes from that specific attendance area development to really talking about our equity work and people's experience in our district. And I think it really highlights, how important this work is. And I think, Janet, to your point earlier, especially kind of getting some of this training out to our support staff, our secretaries, our custodians, food service workers, paraeducators, that so we can all be on that same page, and that when families, no matter where you're from, what your background is, you walk into that school and you feel embraced and welcomed. And so this work is, people's personal stories really make it clear that we have a lot of work to do, but that we're on the right path.
Thank you. Other items folks would want to highlight?
This isn't necessarily on here because it hasn't happened yet, but I would encourage everybody in the public to participate in the run/walk for the schools that's happening this Sunday. It's a great event if you haven't done it. Tons of families, tons of kids, lots of different events for people to participate in. So.
And it might not be snowing.
Or raining.
Or raining. Good, thank you. Anything else? Okay, moving to agenda setting, we've got a whole pile of meetings in front of us. We've already mentioned the meeting on October 11th, this Thursday, 6 to 8. The topic is voluntary transfer, proposed revised policy. Next up then would be the Education Committee for October 16th. We've got a couple items there. First, an athletic discussion, legislative priorities, and then an equity implemented partnership overview.
And we moved the equity implemented partnership review. We had the opportunity to sit down with folks from the University of Iowa. They were very aware of the work that you're doing right now with voluntary transfers, and they volunteered to move until after Thanksgiving. So they will be with us on November 27th, recognizing that that's probably better for everybody.
I think you sent a note to that effect,
Yes,
and I didn't.
so they were very
connect.
generous.
Thank you. So just then, the athletics and the legislative priorities from an education committee perspective. Following education committee that same night, we have a work session where we'll be discussing voluntary transfers and building blocks, maps. We have pairing options on that agenda right now. I would suggest that we take that off, noting that we have decided to move that work to after the new year. Is everyone okay with that?
I'm okay with taking it off as a separate thing. I just think we have to, keep it mindful as we look at the building blocks moving around in kind of anticipation of that work later on, to make sure that stuff we're doing sooner makes more sense
Fair enough.
later also, but I don't think it needs to be a separate thing.
Because
no.
we're not going to have a separate discussion on pairing options. So we'll take that one off from the 16th work session. Then moving to October 23rd and our board meeting. So far, we've got a consent agenda that's under development. We've got a number of presentations in front of us. It's that time of year, the quarterly special education program update, teaching and learning reports, annual financial health report, certified annual report, public education and recreation levy, and a number of action items. Some are typical, but then the school budget review committee application for special education deficit, the school budget review committee application for limited English proficiency deficit, class size, superintendent directions, 3JC RAM classification process, and then our intention to have an action on the voluntary transfer policy on the 23rd.
And on number 3, the U.S. Department of Ed has delayed some of their work with ESSA, and we would ask that you consider moving item 3 back to December after the USDE has actually given us the parameters that we need, which will actually then flow to the state, and that will be part of what the state is looking at as they consider our report card and those classifications.
All right.
And that was a big part of our discussion.
Okay, so class size moves to December. So, the first meeting in December, I guess?
Yes,
Yeah.
we hope to have it by then. The Iowa Department of Ed is keeping us abreast on how quickly the U.S.
Okay.
Department of Ed is moving
So
on
we're
that.
sort of dependent on that. Okay, got it.
Right.
So that comes off then.
Steve, are these reports time sensitive? Do they have to
There are
happen in
annual
October?
reports. We actually usually deliver them the week or the meeting prior to that, which would be tonight. We pushed them back just to make sure that we had enough time to do the work that we needed to here. So they're part of that annual meeting piece. One of the things that I have shared with the ed team is a reminder that we have a presentation protocol. The expectation is they've got a very limited number of slides to share the information. They'll get the reports out, and I've asked them to be very brief.
I'm just wondering if maybe some of these, or all of them, could be moved to November 13th. Since we're taking a big vote that night, we may not have a work session that night. Potentially, we haven't talked about it yet, but to allow
Some
us
of
to get...
them are ed and some of them are
We're likely to
ops.
have some significant community comment at this meeting. We have a lot of work to do in the work session.
Time sensitive on your end, Matt? Matt says no.
We
So
we also are likely to have a big vote on the 13th, too.
Right, and yeah, we'll have a big vote, but since we will be behind at that point, or we will be finished with our work at that point, we maybe won't have a work session afterwards. I know we're not finished, but, you know, we would have reached our goal.
But I'm just wondering, though, it's kind of the same situation on the 23rd as the 13th. that We've got a big vote on whatever boundaries we end up making changes on. Will we not be in the same situation on the 13th?
I think Lori's point is that after this meeting, we would have a work session. It'd be nice if it was shorter,
I
and
see what
after
you're
the
saying.
next one, we wouldn't.
Right.
Got
So
it.
it can run a little
Sorry.
longer, I think.
That's exactly
Yeah.
my point, is that we have significant work to do at that work session. Okay. And I'd rather not have us starting that work at 8:30
Greg says
at
not
night.
time sensitive on the ops ones either.
All right, we'll push them then.
And, you know, and I don't know, maybe if we're concerned about that big vote on November 13th, maybe they should go to December. I don't know. If they're not time sensitive.
We'll move them to the 13th and see how things are progressing at that
Let's
time.
do that. That sounds good. Good, thank
Thank
you
you.
for that. Anything else? For the board meeting on the 23rd, then we have a work session, and we will have voted on voluntary transfer. I'm not sure if we'll need a discussion at that point, and maybe it's just from implementing whatever whatever we vote on. I would suggest that pairing also comes off of the 23rd work session. And I think our primary focus that session is going to be around building blocks and maps.
Yes.
Yep. Okay, so those are the agendas we had in front of us. I think that's our work for the evening. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. No, I, it was clear it was slow.